it's kind of an amazing story, and I feel like right now we're at that point where people are looking at this Clinton email thing, and I don't know that anyone actually understands it yet, what's actually happening. I don't know that it's penetrated at all past people who follow this from day-to-day basis. So how, if you're going to explain this to somebody who is not up on this story at all, how would you do it?
I'll pretend I'm explaining it to my mom in Pittsburgh, who's usually my sounding board for these sorts of things. I say, Mom, here's the deal. Hillary Clinton didn't want, I think, she didn't want the government and future Freedom of Information Act requesters to have access to all the stuff she was pulling behind the scenes while she was Secretary of State, including, perhaps, cutting deals with foreign governments to support her family foundation in exchange for special favors while she was secretary. So she decided to move all her email off-site onto her own private little box where she could control everything and decide what to get rid of. Because, you know, once you send an email to somebody in the government, it never goes away. Now, when she decided to do this, I think she really didn't think things through very well. And as a consequence, she wound up with some classified material on her email server. Separately, Mom, after she was no longer Secretary of State, she said, I got to get this thing out of my house here in Chappaqua, New York. I have to move it out of here because the last thing I want, if this thing ever goes south, is for the FBI to be knocking down my door. So let's move the server somewhere else. Gee, where can I do this in a place nobody will ever look for it? Oh, I know. In a tiny little company that's not on anybody's federal schedule, that doesn't have access or authorization to handle classified material, let's find somebody who's connected to the Democratic Party. Gee, didn't we meet these folks back at the Democratic Convention in 2008 in Denver? Yeah, I think they're connected to John Hickenlooper, who's the governor over there. Sure, let's send it to them and let them sort it out. And that's really where we stand. This little mom and pop company that was run out of a loft apartment in Denver took her server, had a backup made. We still don't know where it is or if it still exists. And then started from that point onward hosting all of her emails in their little rack server in the bathroom of the loft apartment. And these folks are a little bit weird, a little bit wacky. We've just published a story at dailymail.com just a few weeks ago. This is very current here. They held an office party in which they all dressed up as characters from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And you have to ask yourself, are these the cuckoos you want managing state secrets? But that's where we are. You couldn't write this as a Hollywood script. Nobody would ever produce it. They'd say, no, that's just too weird. But truth seems stranger than fiction, especially in the silly season of presidential politics.
It really is.
But that's where we are, Mom. That's where we are, Mom.
Thank you. And there's something I really like about you calling me Mom. I don't know what it is, and I'll have to investigate that in a therapy session later on.
That's a whole separate story. It usually has to do with Ashley Madison.
So you made a point in there of saying she put this all together and she didn't think things through really well. You know, it's a weird thing to think about this because there's no reason to set this up this way unless you're trying to hide something, yet it does seem like she didn't think it through very well. There's backups in places that she seemingly didn't realize there were backups initially. As far as the classified information that has come through, she had to have known some of this was classified, yet she went to the extent to say not only did she not send classified material, she never received it, and almost instantly is proved wrong by investigators. It really does seem like she just thought she was going to live with the gleam of the media and they were not going to look into this. And is she being taken off guard by all of the scrutiny?
Well, first of all, she's a Clinton, so of course she's been playing by a different set of rules, I think, for decades. But look, if from where I sit, just as a reporter, the claim that now, of course, which has evolved from there was no classified material to there was no material that was classified at the time, and now it's there was no material that was stamped or marked as classified. None of those passes the smell test, and here's why. At the end of 2009, so she'd been secretary for almost a whole year, President Obama published an executive order that said, here are the names of 20 people who I am going to authorize as president to determine on their very own what is classified top secret and what isn't. And Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was one of those people. So she had the authority not just to have access to classified material, but to classify material herself. She was trained and by definition had to have signed a piece of paper and given it to the intelligence community agencies saying, yes, I understand what these obligations are, folks.